The hum of machinery echoed through Earth's military base as the sun dipped beneath the horizon. The base, a massive structure tucked deep within the planet's most secure region, was quiet, too quiet. But there was a growing sense of urgency. Inside a dimly lit control room, officers shuffled anxiously, their eyes glued to their screens. A message had just been received, a strange, encrypted signal that no one could explain. The message had come from deep space, far beyond the reaches of human exploration, from a place unknown. The transmission was short but chilling. Stay out of the war, or face the consequences. The words hung in the air, causing a ripple of unease to spread across the room. Earth's leaders, aware of the increasing tensions in the galaxy, had been monitoring the situation closely. The Galactic Council, a coalition of the most advanced species in the universe, had been gearing up for war with the Zorthari, a technologically superior and ruthless alien race. But why this message? And why now? The urgency was clear. As the military officials scrambled to decode the message, a sense of dread took over the control room. This wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. But who was it from? Who would dare to reach out to Earth? The Council's power had been absolute for centuries, and humans had always been seen as nothing more than a speck in the vastness of the galaxy. So why would someone be reaching out to Earth now? Outside, military ships were preparing for deployment, their engines rumbling in anticipation. Earth was bracing itself for the potential of full-scale galactic conflict. Yet, despite the seriousness of the situation, the humans were not included in the conflict. Earth had been excluded. The Galactic Council had made it clear. Humans were not to be part of this war. The Council feared the unpredictability of humanity. Their reputation was well known throughout the galaxy. Survivors, relentless fighters, outliers in every conflict. Earth's military had taken down entire fleets of superior forces in the past, and the Council feared that the same might happen again. If humans joined the fight, the balance of power in the galaxy could shift. And no one, especially the Council, was ready to face that. As the encrypted message flashed across the screen, Earth's leaders were faced with a chilling question. What was the Council hiding? Why would they go so far to keep humanity out of this war? What did the Council fear about Earth's involvement? Was it truly the unpredictability of humanity, or was there something darker at play? The tension was palpable. Even the most seasoned officers in the room could feel it, an invisible weight pressing down on them. The military ships, standing ready to launch, were now a symbol of the growing uncertainty. The world was on the brink of something much bigger than anyone could comprehend. The message was decoded. A cold, mechanical voice repeated the warning. Keep humans out of the war. If you do not, the galaxy will regret it. A wave of unease washed over the control room. This wasn't just a standard warning. It felt like a death sentence. Why was Earth being excluded? Why were humans, who had been nothing but peaceful in the galactic community, now considered a threat? There was no way to answer these questions yet, but the sense of danger was clear. Someone powerful, was making sure humanity stayed out of the conflict, and that alone raised red flags. If the Council feared humanity's involvement, then perhaps they knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. As the officers looked at one another, the realization set in. Earth might be caught in the middle of something much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. What was the Council planning? What was coming? The military officials were on high alert now. The words of the encrypted message echoed in their minds. Face the consequences. The implications were enormous. If the Galactic Council was indeed preparing for war, the consequences for Earth could be catastrophic. The control room buzzed with activity as they began to strategize. Should Earth stand back and obey the Council's orders, or should they prepare for a confrontation, even if they didn't fully understand the enemy yet? The uncertainty was maddening. Earth's leaders could sense that the threat was real. But was the message a trap? Or was it a genuine warning from a group or faction that feared the rise of humanity? The next move could determine the fate of the entire planet. The military ships, ready to engage in the most important conflict of their time, stood still. No one knew who the enemy was, but there was no time to waste. The Council's forces were vast, and their technologies were beyond anything Earth had ever encountered. But humans had survived the odds before. Could they survive this time? In the midst of all this uncertainty, one thing became painfully clear. Earth was no longer a bystander in the galactic stage. Whether the Council wanted them in the fight or not, humanity would have to make a choice. They could stay out of the war, as the message advised, or they could step forward and face the consequences. The stakes had never been higher. The officers stared at the encrypted message one last time. The urgency was unmistakable. Whoever sent this warning knew that humanity had the potential to change everything, and that made them a target. But could Earth truly stay out of galactic warfare, or would they be forced to enter a conflict far greater than they could imagine? The only thing left to do was wait. The warning was clear, but the path ahead was shrouded in mystery. The next few days would decide the fate of humanity. Would Earth remain neutral, or would it fight back? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The warning from the stars was only the beginning. Earth had no choice but to prepare for the worst. The transmission had left everyone on edge, especially with the unknown threat hanging over their heads. The sudden appearance of the encrypted message had already stirred up a sense of dread. But now, the galaxy was about to prove just how dangerous it could be. In the days that followed the message, Earth's military scrambled to make sense of the situation. They had never been in a galactic conflict like this before. The mysterious Galactic Council had always considered humanity a mere curiosity, never worth the trouble. Yet now, something had changed. The tension in the galaxy was escalating, and Earth was being pulled into the web of galactic politics against its will. As the military worked tirelessly to analyze the message, flashes of past events began to surface, memories of earlier galactic wars. Humans had always been at a disadvantage in these conflicts. They had faced technologically superior enemies time and time again. Yet, against all odds, humanity had never been fully defeated. The history books were filled with tales of how humans survived by outthinking their enemies. Strategy, cunning, and sheer determination had been their weapons. But even with all that, the odds were never in their favor. Flashbacks to earlier wars brought these memories back vividly. In one such war, Earth's forces had been outnumbered by a race of towering, powerful aliens with energy weapons beyond anything Earth could imagine. Yet the humans had managed to turn the tide. They hadn't had the most advanced weapons, but they used their limited resources and sheer willpower to launch a surprise attack that overwhelmed the alien forces. Time and time again, humanity had proved that the galaxy underestimated their ability to survive. Now, the galaxy was on the brink of war once more, and Earth had to face the consequences of being an outsider. The warning had been clear, but no one knew exactly what it meant until the Zorthari arrived. The Zorthari were an elite alien faction known for their brutality and technological superiority. Their ships were sleek, silent, and equipped with advanced cloaking technology that made them nearly invisible in deep space. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets with a single strike. But despite all their power, they were known to be deeply arrogant. They saw themselves as the rulers of the galaxy, their technology so advanced that they believed no race could challenge them. Yet Earth was about to find out that the Zorthari weren't invincible. It all began when the Zorthari launched an attack on Earth's closest space colony, a vital outpost that served as a trade hub and research center. The colony, located on the edge of human-controlled space, was barely prepared for an attack. Its defenses were outdated, and its military presence was minimal. The humans stationed there had no idea that the Zorthari were coming. The attack was swift, deadly, and without warning. The Zorthari made it clear. They blamed humanity for the escalating tensions in the galaxy. They accused humans of aggression, hoping to provoke a full-scale war. In a cruel twist, the Zorthari saw this as a way to trigger a galactic conflict, one in which they would wipe out any race that stood in their way. They wanted to weaken the Galactic Council's hold on the galaxy by framing Earth as a threat. The attack sent shockwaves through Earth's military command. The colony had no chance of defending itself, and its distress signal was the only thing that reached Earth in time. The message was desperate and filled with panic, telling Earth that the colony was under attack and that the Zorthari were blaming humanity for starting the war. The news spread quickly. The Galactic Council, already wary of Earth's growing presence in the galaxy, saw this as a perfect excuse to cut humanity out of the galactic stage for good. But the humans were not ready to back down. The message had been received, and Earth's military was now on high alert. With limited resources and no time to prepare, Earth's military had no choice but to launch a counterattack. The situation was dire, but there was no other option. The humans had to fight back, even if they didn't fully understand the magnitude of the war they were stepping into. The scene was set for the first major battle in this new galactic conflict. As Earth's ships raced toward the space colony, their officers knew they were vastly outgunned. The Zorthari had ships equipped with cloaking devices and advanced weaponry that could easily decimate Earth's forces. Yet the humans had one advantage the Zorthari did not: ingenuity. As the battle began, Earth's military engaged the Zorthari in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse. The Zorthari ships were invisible, slipping in and out of view, launching deadly attacks with pinpoint accuracy. But Earth's forces had anticipated this. They had developed cloaking detection technology that allowed them to track the Zorthari, even in their cloaked state. The battle quickly became a high-speed chase, with Earth's ships dodging fire while attempting to outmaneuver the superior Zorthari forces. Amid the chaos, Earth's military leaders made split-second decisions that turned the tide in their favor. They used the environment of the space colony to their advantage, creating traps for the Zorthari ships, forcing them into narrow corridors where their advanced technology couldn't fully compensate for the human speed and tactics. The Zorthari may have had superior firepower, but humans were relentless. Their creativity in combat, born of necessity, was what gave them the edge. Fast-paced space combat filled the skies as Earth's ships launched precise attacks, trying to disable the Zorthari vessels before they could strike back. The battle raged for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. In the midst of the battle, a group of elite Zorthari fighters attempted a daring assault on the colony itself, hoping to capture the humans and make an example of them. But the humans weren't going down without a fight. As the Zorthari advanced, Earth's ground forces fought valiantly to protect the colony's inhabitants. The humans used their most advanced military AI, which was able to calculate and predict the Zorthari's movements with startling accuracy. Earth's forces had a serious technological disadvantage, but their resourcefulness and will to survive were enough to keep them in the fight. The Zorthari underestimated the humans, as they always had. They had assumed Earth's forces would crumble under the pressure. But the humans were just getting started. As the battle drew to a close, Earth had managed to defend the space colony, but the cost was great. Many soldiers had died, and the colony had been left in ruins. Yet the humans had proven something crucial. Despite being outnumbered, underpowered, and facing the full might of an advanced alien force, humanity had not only survived, they had fought back with everything they had. This victory, however, was just the beginning. Earth's forces had shown the galaxy that they could not be ignored. The Zorthari had learned a hard lesson: never underestimate humanity. And as the dust settled and the survivors regrouped, one thing was certain: the war had only just begun. The galaxy had underestimated Earth for far too long. Now, Earth was ready to show the universe what it was made of. The rogues of the galaxy had awakened a sleeping giant, and the consequences would be felt across the stars. The heat of battle had not yet cooled when Sergeant Bonner and his team discovered the horrifying truth about the attack on Earth. At first, it seemed like just another skirmish, a violent clash with the Zorthari. But as Bonner and his comrades dug deeper, something didn't add up. The more they investigated, the clearer it became. Earth wasn't just the victim of an alien attack. Earth was being manipulated into a war it didn't want to fight. It all started when Bonner found a hidden message during a routine mission to retrieve sensitive data from a Zorthari communication hub. The encrypted files were far more than simple battle plans. They were something much darker. Bonner, using his military training, managed to decrypt part of the files. What he found made his blood run cold. The Galactic Council, the very organization Earth had trusted to maintain peace across the galaxy, was behind the attack. It wasn't the Zorthari who had instigated the conflict. It was the Council itself. Bonner's eyes scanned the document in disbelief. According to the files, the attack was orchestrated by a faction within the Council that sought to provoke a galactic war, one in which Earth would be used as a pawn. The goal was to drive the galaxy into chaos, where the Council could assert even more control. It felt like the ground beneath Bonner's feet had just vanished. How could this be possible? The Council, the one entity that humans had looked to for stability, had betrayed them. For years, Earth had been a peaceful part of the galactic system, always trying to maintain order, to avoid conflict. And now, the very people they had trusted were responsible for the bloodshed. Bonner immediately shared the findings with his closest allies, including his best friend, Sergeant Cal. The two had fought side by side through countless battles, their bond forged in the fires of war. Cal was more than just a teammate, he was family. Together, they had survived impossible odds, and together, they had always believed in the greater good. Now, this betrayal was threatening to tear apart everything they had fought for. The two of them stood in silence for a moment, trying to process the devastating news. Cal's face twisted in disbelief. "This can't be right, Bonner. The Council has always stood for peace. How could they?" "I don't know," Bonner replied, his voice heavy with anger and confusion. "But it's the truth. Earth's been played. We've all been used as pawns." As the realization set in, the emotional weight of the discovery began to hit harder. The anger burned inside Bonner like a fire he couldn't extinguish. He had always believed that the Council was looking out for the best interests of humanity, but now that belief was shattered. It was hard to trust anyone now. Who could they rely on when the very people who were supposed to protect them were the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes? The intensity of the situation grew as Bonner and Cal continued their mission to expose the truth. The two soldiers, along with their team, infiltrated a secret alien stronghold believed to house further evidence of the Council's treachery. Their objective was clear: find proof that could expose the Council's involvement to the galaxy and bring justice to the humans who had already suffered so much. Inside the stronghold, the air was thick with tension. Bonner's heart pounded in his chest as they made their way deeper into the heart of enemy territory. Every corner turned, every shadow cast, could be hiding a deadly ambush. The walls seemed to close in around them as they moved silently, but their nerves were on edge. The sound of distant footsteps echoed down the halls, alerting them to the presence of enemy patrols. It was a race against time. They had to find the evidence and escape before the Zorthari, or worse, the Council's agents, found them first. The team moved quickly, cutting down any enemies in their path with precise, calculated strikes. The weapon's fire lit up the dimly lit corridors, the harsh light flashing off the walls as the two sides clashed. Bonner and Cal fought side by side, their movements synchronized like a well-practiced dance. Each step they took brought them closer to uncovering the truth, but also to an inevitable confrontation. During the battle, Bonner's mind was sharp, focused on the mission, but there was something else tugging at his heart, a constant reminder of the betrayal they were facing. The anger was starting to boil over, and as they advanced deeper into the facility, that anger only grew. Every alien they fought, every Zorthari they encountered, represented a piece of the puzzle that would expose the Council's plan. They finally reached the central chamber, where the final pieces of evidence were said to be kept. The moment they entered, Bonner's heart skipped a beat. The chamber was surrounded by high-tech defenses, and it was clear that this would be the most dangerous part of their mission. Bonner's team moved in cautiously, ready for the final push. As they approached the central computer terminal, Bonner felt a pang of dread. This was it. The truth was just a few feet away. But just as they were about to reach the terminal, disaster struck. A group of Zorthari elite soldiers ambushed them, launching a brutal attack. Blaster fire filled the room, and the team was forced to engage in a desperate fight for survival. Bonner and Cal were at the forefront, pushing forward despite the overwhelming odds. The sound of explosions and gunfire was deafening, but Bonner only had one focus: get the evidence, expose the truth. As the two soldiers fought side by side, their bond was undeniable. Cal, ever the brave warrior, was moving with Bonner, blocking enemy fire and providing cover. They were so in sync, so focused on their mission, that nothing seemed impossible. But in the chaos of battle, disaster struck. A blast hit Cal, knocking him to the ground. Bonner's heart stopped as he rushed to his side. Cal's face was pale, his breathing shallow. The wound was severe. The battle was still raging around them, but Bonner only had eyes for his friend. He tried to drag Cal to safety, but it was too late. Cal's injuries were too severe. "Stay with me, Cal," Bonner urged, desperation creeping into his voice. "We can make it out of here. Just hold on." But Cal, ever the brave soldier, gave Bonner a weak smile. It's too late for me, Bonner." His voice was barely a whisper, but the words hit Bonner like a ton of bricks. "You have to finish this. You have to make them pay for what they did. For all of us." With those final words, Cal's eyes closed for the last time. Bonner's heart shattered. He had lost his best friend, the one person who had been with him through everything. It was more than just a loss. It was a betrayal of everything they had stood for. Cal had fought for the truth, for the survival of Earth, and now that truth was within Bonner's reach, but at a devastating cost. With the evidence in hand, Bonner carried Cal's body out of the facility, the weight of his loss pressing down on him. He was more determined than ever to expose the Council's treachery. Cal had given his life for this cause, and Bonner wouldn't let it be in vain. The betrayal stung, but it also fueled Bonner's resolve. The truth had to come out. The Council had to answer for what they had done. And Earth would fight, not just for survival, but for justice. As Bonner looked out into the stars, a new sense of purpose filled him. The war had only just begun. And this time, the galaxy would know the price of underestimating humanity. As the weeks passed, the truth about the Galactic Council's betrayal sank deeper into the hearts of humanity. It was a hard pill to swallow, but it wasn't one they could ignore. The attack on Earth had set off a chain of events that left Earth's forces with no choice but to act. The message from the stars, the warning to stay out of the war, was a directive that humanity would no longer follow. Earth had been pushed into the war, whether the Council liked it or not. And this time, humanity was going to fight back. The Council had underestimated the will of humankind. They thought they could control the galaxy with threats and intimidation, but they hadn't accounted for Earth's greatest strength, its resilience. And now, Earth was preparing for its most daring operation yet, one that would take them deep into the heart of the Council's territory. The military mobilized swiftly, and the decision was made. Earth would send a powerful strike against one of the Council's key space stations, but Earth wasn't going in blind. New AI-driven warships had been developed, and with them, advanced cloaking devices that would make it nearly impossible for the enemy to detect their movements. It was the perfect plan, a surprise attack that would catch the Council off guard. The squad selected for this mission was a mix of veterans and new recruits, all of them united by a single purpose: to take down the Council. Among them was Sergeant Bonner, still reeling from the loss of his best friend Cal, but more determined than ever. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but his resolve was stronger than it had ever been. This time, they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice. The operation began in the dead of night, with Earth's warships entering the enemy-controlled space station's proximity. Using the cloaking technology, they moved undetected through the vast reaches of space, closing in on their target. The plan was simple: infiltrate the station, disable the key systems, and leave before the Council could even react. The human forces were confident. They had the element of surprise, and they had technology that the Council had never seen before. As the warships got closer to the station, Bonner's heart raced. The tension in the air was palpable. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The squad was in position, and they were about to board the station. Bonner and his team, suited in the latest tactical gear, were ready. Their mission was clear: strike fast, hit hard, and get out. The first phase of the operation went off without a hitch. Earth's forces infiltrated the station, silently slipping past the outer defenses with the help of cloaking technology. The station was eerily quiet, and at first, it seemed like they were going to pull off the impossible. There was no sign of resistance. Bonner's squad moved through the dimly lit hallways, slipping through shadows, their movements precise and calculated. They reached the heart of the station without encountering any major obstacles. The station's central control hub was their target. If they could disable the main systems, they would cripple the station's ability to retaliate. The squad worked quickly, each soldier executing their role with precision. Bonner coordinated the mission from the front, issuing commands and keeping the team focused. It seemed like they were going to succeed without a hitch. But as the team moved deeper into the station, something began to feel off. The silence was unsettling, and Bonner couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, but he pushed the feeling aside. They couldn't afford to second-guess themselves. They had to stay focused. It wasn't long before their worst fears were confirmed. Just as they began disabling the station's main reactor, the alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed across the station, and the deep hum of the station's power systems shifted into an urgent, aggressive tone. The humans had walked right into a trap. The Council had been expecting them all along. Panic set in, but Bonner's training took over. "Move, now," he barked, signaling for the squad to retreat. The sound of enemy soldiers rushing to intercept them echoed through the corridors. It was a race against time. Earth's forces had to get out before the entire station went into lockdown. The escape was chaos. Soldiers, once confident and stealthy, were now scrambling for cover as enemy troops poured into the station. The unexpected ambush turned what was supposed to be a smooth operation into a desperate fight for survival. Bonner and his team fought fiercely, blasting their way through the station's corridors, trying to make it to their extraction point before it was too late. The enemy was relentless, pushing back against the humans with overwhelming force. Every step Bonner and his squad took seemed to be met with a dozen more enemies. The close-quarters combat was intense, with soldiers trading fire at point-blank range. Explosions rocked the station, sending debris flying in every direction. The battle had turned into a deadly game of survival. The humans had expected the surprise attack to be their advantage, but now they were fighting for their lives. The cloaking devices, once their greatest asset, were now useless in the face of the enemy's overwhelming numbers. Bonner's heart raced as he tried to keep the squad focused. Their objective hadn't changed. They had to complete the mission, or all of this would be for nothing. As they fought their way toward the extraction point, Bonner's mind raced. How had the Council known they were coming? Who had betrayed them? These were questions that needed answers, but there was no time to think. The priority now was survival. The squad pressed on, cutting down enemies in their path, using every trick and tactic they could think of. The humans had something the Council didn't: resourcefulness and the will to fight. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the squad reached the extraction point. Their warships were waiting, cloaked and ready to transport them back to safety. But not all of them would make it. The toll of the battle had been heavy. Some of Bonner's squad members had been injured, and a few had fallen. The price of victory was high. As the warships took off, leaving the burning station behind, Bonner looked at his team. Their faces were grim, their eyes filled with the weight of their losses. They had won, but at what cost? The mission had been a success, but the battle had taken a toll on everyone involved. Despite the victory, there was no time to celebrate. The war was far from over. The raid had been a turning point. It was clear that Earth's forces were capable of more than anyone had realized. But it also showed just how dangerous the Council had become. Earth was in a fight for its very survival, and the price of freedom would be steep. Bonner's squad was shaken, but their resolve had never been stronger. They had faced overwhelming odds and come out victorious. The human spirit had triumphed once again. The war in the shadows had begun, and Earth would no longer cower in the face of the Council's tyranny. The fight for the galaxy's future was just getting started. The air was thick with tension as Earth's fleet prepared for the final confrontation. What had started as a series of isolated skirmishes had now escalated into an all-out war. The Galactic Council, a force once thought invincible, was about to face its most formidable adversary, humanity. Earth's warships, now fully mobilized, took their positions in the void of space. The time for strategy, planning, and second chances was over. It was time for a galactic showdown. Bonner, now the de facto leader of Earth's forces, stood on the bridge of one of Earth's most advanced warships. His face was set in a grim expression as he watched the stars twinkle in the vast emptiness of space. The fleet was ready. They had gathered every available ship, from the most advanced A-driven warships to the older, more reliable vessels, each one carrying humanity's hopes. But Bonner knew that the odds were still stacked against them. The Council was vast, its fleets nearly unlimited. Still, humanity had something the Council didn't: determination, resilience, and a willingness to fight until the very end. The battle began with a deafening roar as the Earth's ships broke the silence of space. Orbital bombardments lit up the skies, bright flashes illuminating the void as bombs rained down on enemy positions. The forces of the Galactic Council, massive and technologically superior, responded with a fury. Their warships, vast and heavily armored, unleashed devastating firepower, cutting through space like a storm. The skies seemed to ignite with the destruction. But Earth's warships were faster. The human fleet had spent years adapting, developing new technologies to give them an edge. Earth's ships were smaller, more maneuverable, and far more agile than the massive, lumbering ships of the Council. They darted and weaved through space, avoiding the enemy's fire with impressive speed and precision. It wasn't just the ships that were quick. The human soldiers, both in space and on the ground, had adapted to this new kind of warfare. They fought with a level of resourcefulness and cunning that the Council hadn't anticipated. The space battle was a spectacle of destruction. Massive explosions lit up the horizon as ships collided and crumbled. The air crackled with the power of advanced energy weapons, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. Despite being technologically inferior, Earth's fleet was proving to be a formidable force. They fought fiercely, and the momentum of the battle began to shift in their favor. On the ground, the battle was just as intense. The Galactic Council's forces, despite their technological superiority, were not prepared for the tenacity and willpower of human soldiers. Alien forces tried to land and establish a foothold on Earth's military bases, but they were met with relentless resistance. Human soldiers, trained for combat on their home planet's harsh terrains, fought back with everything they had. The alien invaders, despite their advanced technology, found themselves outmatched by the sheer determination of Earth's defenders. Sergeant Bonner's mind raced as he coordinated the defense from the front lines. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. His thoughts briefly flickered to Cal, his best friend, who had fallen during the earlier battles. Cal's sacrifice had been the spark that ignited Bonner's resolve to see this war through. He couldn't afford to let that sacrifice be in vain. Every move, every decision, was now about ensuring humanity's survival. The stakes had never been higher. The fight on the ground had moved into the heart of a sprawling space station. Human forces had managed to breach the outer defenses, but now they were up against the full might of the Zortheri, the alien faction that had instigated the conflict. The Zortheri commander, the one who had orchestrated the attack on Earth's space colonies, was still at large. Bonner knew that taking down the commander would be the key to ending the war and securing victory for humanity. But the road to him was fraught with danger. Bonner's squad moved through the station's narrow corridors, weapons ready. They had one goal: to reach the command center and take out the Zortheri commander before he could rally the Council's forces for a counterattack. The station was a maze of collapsing structures, with explosions rocking the walls and sending debris tumbling to the ground. The further they pushed into the heart of the station, the more intense the battle became. Zortheri soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry and technology, ambushed the humans at every turn. But Bonner's team was relentless. As they neared the command center, the tension reached its peak. The Zortheri commander, a towering figure with cold, calculating eyes, awaited them. He had anticipated this moment. This was the showdown they had all been preparing for. Bonner's heart pounded in his chest as he exchanged fire with the commander's elite guards. The station's walls shook as explosions reverberated through the halls. Bonner's thoughts turned back to the sacrifices they had all made for this moment. Cal's death weighed heavily on him, but there was no time to grieve. This was the endgame. The final battle between Bonner and the Zortheri commander was a clash of titans. It wasn't just a fight for victory. It was a fight for humanity's future. Bonner's mind raced as he dodged and countered, using every ounce of his training and every trick he had learned in the field. The Zortheri commander was powerful, his movements fast and precise. But Bonner was fighting for something bigger. He wasn't just fighting for Earth. He was fighting for freedom, for the lives of every human being in the galaxy. The battle took them through collapsing corridors, across fire-ravaged command decks, and into the heart of the station's reactor core. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Each move was more desperate than the last. Bonner could feel his strength waning, but he refused to give up. He knew the cost of failure. The fate of humanity was in his hands. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Bonner managed to land the decisive blow. The Zortheri commander crumpled to the ground, his weapon falling from his grasp. Bonner stood over him, panting, his body covered in sweat and blood. It was over. The Zortheri faction that had started this war had been defeated. The battle was won. As Bonner took a moment to catch his breath, he couldn't help but think of Cal. His best friend had fought beside him through the darkest times, and now he was gone. But Cal's sacrifice had paved the way for victory. Earth had won, not just because of their superior tactics or advanced technology, but because they had never given up. They had fought for what was right. And in the end, that was what had made all the difference. With the command center secure, Earth's forces began to reclaim the station. The battle was far from over, but the victory was a turning point. The Galactic Council had been dealt a crushing blow, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven its worth, not just to the Council, but to the entire galaxy. The fight for freedom was far from over, but Bonner knew one thing for sure: humanity was not to be underestimated. They had won the war in the shadows, and now they were stepping into the light, ready to take on whatever the galaxy had to throw at them next. The war had raged for so long that it felt like time itself had stopped. The once quiet stars were now the backdrop to humanity's greatest battle, a conflict that would decide the fate of the galaxy. The forces of the Galactic Council, vast and powerful, had underestimated Earth for far too long. The Zortheri, a rogue faction within the Council, had ignited a war they thought would be over in a matter of weeks. But they had failed to recognize one critical factor: humanity's unpredictability. The final confrontation would take place in a space station that orbited Earth, a station that had once been a symbol of peace and unity within the galaxy. Now, it was a battleground, a place where the fate of the galaxy would be decided. Earth's fleet had mobilized every ship, every soldier, and every resource available to them. Their enemy was the full might of the Galactic Council, led by the Zorthari commander who had orchestrated the attack on Earth's colonies. But humanity had one thing the Council didn't: determination. And now, with the final battle at hand, humanity was ready to show the galaxy just what they were capable of. The Galactic Council had brought their most advanced weaponry, the AI-driven forces that had once been thought invincible. These machines were faster, stronger, and more precise than any human force. But there was one thing they couldn't account for: the human spirit. Earth's soldiers had faced overwhelming odds before, and they had always found a way to survive. This time would be no different. As the battle began, the sound of clashing ships echoed through the void of space. The Council's ships, massive and powerful, fired their weapons with unrelenting precision. But the humans were not intimidated. They fought with a fierce determination that could not be matched. Their warships darted and weaved through the battlefield, avoiding the enemy's fire with incredible speed and agility. The AI-driven forces of the Council, though advanced, were predictable. They relied on logic, on calculations, but they lacked the creativity that humans brought to the fight. The first clash was brutal. Earth's ships were smaller and less heavily armored, but they made up for it with speed and unpredictability. The humans used every advantage they had, from cloaking devices to advanced AI, that helped them outmaneuver their opponents. It wasn't just about firepower. It was about outsmarting the enemy at every turn. The AI-driven forces of the Council, despite their technological superiority, found themselves outplayed by the humans' tactics. They couldn't anticipate the human way of fighting, which was always changing, always adapting. On the ground, the battle raged just as fiercely. The Zorthari commander, once thought to be invincible, found himself facing a human force unlike any he had encountered before. Bonner, now the leader of Earth's forces, was at the center of it all. His resolve was unshakable as he led his soldiers into the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The loss of his best friend, Cal, had only made him more determined to see this war through. He knew that every victory, every inch of ground they gained, was a step closer to the final goal: defeating the Zorthari commander and ending the war. The Zorthari commander, a cold and calculating figure, was everything the Council had hoped for. He was ruthless, powerful, and precise. But he had made one fatal mistake. He underestimated the humans. Bonner and his team pushed forward, their weapons blazing as they fought their way through the enemy's defenses. They were outnumbered, but their resolve made up for their lack of resources. They fought for the future of Earth, for the lives of their families, and for the freedom of the galaxy. The final showdown between Bonner and the Zorthari commander was inevitable. It had been building for years, and now it was time to face the consequences of their actions. The two men met in the heart of the space station, surrounded by the wreckage of the battle. The Zorthari commander stood tall, his cold eyes focused on Bonner, while the human soldier's gaze burned with determination. They were both weary, but neither was willing to give up. This was it, the moment that would define the future of the galaxy. The battle between them was fierce, a clash of willpower as much as skill. The Zorthari commander was a master of his weapons, but Bonner's mind was sharper, his instincts honed by years of war. It was more than just a fight for survival. It was a fight for the future of humanity. Bonner knew that if he failed, the Council would crush Earth, and the galaxy would fall under their rule. But if he succeeded, Earth would prove that they were not to be underestimated. In the end, it was Bonner who emerged victorious. With a final, decisive strike, he brought the Zorthari commander to the ground. The commander's cold, calculating eyes filled with surprise as he realized that his plans had been foiled. Humanity had won. The Galactic Council had been defeated. With the Zorthari commander dead, and the Council's forces in disarray, Earth sent its message to the galaxy. It wasn't a message of vengeance or hatred. It wasn't a message of defeat. It was a message of warning. We are not your enemies, but if you push us, you will understand the price of underestimating humanity. Earth had proven that they were no longer a small, insignificant planet on the edge of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with. As the message was broadcast, Earth's fleet returned home. The war was over, but the future was uncertain. The galaxy would never be the same again. Earth had proven its strength, but the cost had been high. Many lives had been lost, and many battles had been fought. But in the end, humanity had emerged victorious. They were no longer the underdogs. They were players on the galactic stage, and the rest of the galaxy would have to take notice. The final shot is of Earth, bathed in the light of a new dawn. The scars of war were still visible, but there was hope in the air. The people of Earth had fought for their survival, and now they could look to the future with a new sense of purpose. The battle was won, but the fight for the future had only just begun. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were not a race to be trifled with. They were survivors, fighters, and thinkers. The galaxy had learned its lesson the hard way. Earth was not just surviving anymore. It was thriving. And no one, not even the most powerful factions in the galaxy, would ever forget that. The war was over, but the story of humanity's rise had only just begun.